everybody. Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media here at High Point Solutions Stadiums for another edition of the Rebuilding Rutgers podcast. Another victory for the Scarlet Knights. I'm joined as always by contractually extended beat writers Ryan Dunleavy, Keith Sargent. I think at this point, I don't know about you guys. It's certainly the season has certainly exceeded my expectations. You look back, of course, they're going to lament the Eastern Michigan loss for forever. But to win 3 Big Ten games, the performance the Scarlet Knights had in this 31-24 victory over Maryland was good on a lot of levels. And I think, talking to the coaches today, listening to the coaches at their press conference today, I think they were really pleased with how this team blocked, how the quarterback played despite the stats. I mean, we learned a lot that the way the defense responded to adversity. I mean, they were happy with this performance.
Yeah, I think the most impressive thing to me is the whole, how many teams have we all been around where they say next man up, and you tune it out?
Right.
To me, Rutgers has really kind of owned this next man up thing, and it seems like a guy gets hurt and some guy who wasn't even on the 2 deep in the preseason comes in, or it's which offensive player is going to go play defense now? I asked Gio the other day if he has any defensive experience because I just expect him to be a linebacker. It's like high school football where you play 2 ways. And I think that's really, if you look into it, I think it's kind of a credit to this team, desperate to overachieve, desperate to bond together, desperate to prove people wrong. I think that's showing up in that next man up philosophy, and that's kind of. Yeah. That whole defense is just kind of led the way because of an unselfishness. Yeah.
And another thing you tune out too, Sarge, you mentioned we tune out when they say, "Hey, this team really gets along, and this team likes each other." Yeah. Another thing that's a cliche you hear all the time in sports. Well, I think that's true as well. I mean, that's something that really seems to be the chemistry is so much better this year.
No doubt, and we talked to. I think you might have even asked a question to Gio Ricino after the game, and that's what he pretty much pointed to. And it also sounds like a cliche, but I think this team really does have good chemistry, and they're a fun team. They're
fun to be around.
Everyone likes an underdog story, right? Yeah. I mean, you kind of like that. That's what this team's morphing into. I'll give you one stat. Courtesy of Jimmy Gill, Rutgers cracked statistician.
And a fan of the podcast.
Yes, a fan of the podcast. Since 1960, there have been 30 Big Ten teams coming off a winless year. Only 4 of them have ever won 3 games the following year. The last one was Minnesota in 1989.
Wow. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's crazy. Rutgers has 3 Big Ten wins. No one would have thought that.
And the thing that I keep coming back to is, I don't know. We keep talking about how the team likes each other, and everybody keeps saying brotherhood and all. And you're right. That's a word that as soon as I hear brotherhood, I tap out.
Right.
But I don't think, to me, that makes me think, did last year's team have bad apples on it? And I don't think so. I think, look back at last year's team. JPO is an all-time good guy. Darius Hamilton. I don't think last year's team had bad guys on it. I think it is the ultimate example of a guy's message just taking a year to sink in, basically. I don't think last year's team was, full of bad guys who weren't close to each other or whatnot. Last year had some of the great leaders. I know Chris Muller, Derek Nelson. I loved those guys. I just think they were so set in the Schiano flood ways that it just took a year of this is Chris Ash's way or the highway of guys to buy in and then get closer.
We'd be a little naive, though. I mean, there are 120 guys.
Well, of course.
We talked to maybe 20, 25 in a given year. We'd be a little naive to think that there weren't some bad apples.
But you don't think there are bad apples on this year's
team? There's probably
a few. Yeah,
there's probably still need to weed out and spend another year.
Yeah.
But we'd be naive to think that, everything.
I'm just saying, from a leadership standpoint, I don't think the leaders were bad apples. The Hamiltons,
no, and we could pinpoint. I don't want to pinpoint former captains, but we could pinpoint years where you look back midway through the year and they had bad leadership.
Oh, I can think of one year particularly.
Yeah, I think we're both on the same page there, but. It just so happened it was a player who took a day off training camp to go to a wedding. So I think
as a coach who took a day off training to go to Counting Crows concert.
Fair point.
Seriously,
that was
days
off. The same year. No, that was a year.
It
might have been the same year.
Yeah. I mean, I think that says it all, and I think that the leadership is there. For sure.
All right, so we talked about it last week, and now that they actually have 4 victories and can get to 5 victories, let's look at this possibility of the bowls at 5-7. We've done a little bit more research. Aaron Patel, fan of the podcast, fan of us on Twitter. No, he really hates us all on Twitter. But anyway, fan of the podcast.
He told me I'm a terrible beat writer, joke of a beat writer.
Well, you are. That's true. He had a nice chart, though, showing all the teams, the 50 different teams in the position to go to, ahead of them in the APR. Yeah. All right, Sarge, you did some research. What is the deal? Where are we now? If this team beats Indiana, can it make a bowl game?
Did you just say we?
Where are we now?
Media people?
I don't know.
Okay.
Where are we now, as in, are we going to be in Detroit or Dallas on Christmas?
Yeah, that
where are we now?
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought,
this is the royal win.
Where are we now? In life, where are we? But, no, so keep in mind, a year ago there were 40 bowl games, so that meant 80 spots. Now there's one less bowl game, no more points at a bowl. I know you're a big fan.
That's terrible.
I know. You were a big fan of that
First of all, can we do a round of applause for one less bowl game? Like, somehow college football eliminated them. I thought you were going to say there's one more bowl game.
But now you're talking 78 teams, which a week ago when I was talking about how 2 5-7 teams, North Texas and Mississippi State, both went to bowl games at 5-7. Now you're talking 2 less. So that's one factor against Rutgers. We're all talking about, to be clear here, Rutgers at 5-7 because Rutgers is going to be a heavy underdog in 2 of their final 3 games. Yes. Indiana in 2 weeks. You figure they have a pretty good, realistic shot to win that game. Mm-hmm. So we're talking 5-7. So there are 39 bowl games. Right now, you have 50 bowl eligible teams with 3 weeks left. And at 5 wins, there are 21 teams. So let's just, for argument's sake, say all 21 of those teams make it. And you're talking 71 teams. Then you're talking 7 spots. Right. Then you go down to the 4-win teams currently, and there's 25 4-win teams.
Wow. Yeah.
So you're talking 7 of 25. And then beyond that, you have pretty good math, 7 of those 25 to get the 6 wins. Which would eliminate Rutgers at 5-7 completely, because the rule
but Rutgers
is now
is one of those 25 teams.
What's that?
Rutgers
is one of those 25 teams, but again, they're a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the rule is now if you win 6 games, no matter what conference, they did away with the rule where a 5-7 team could jump over a 6-win team from the WAC
which they should.
Yeah, which is good. Now you're guaranteed at 6 wins, you're going to a bowl. So basically, long story long. The odds are against them going to a bowl game at 5-7,
and the odds are also against them winning one of Michigan State or Penn State. I was stunned by this. I love to pop you guys with trivia every week.
Oh, please!
When's the last time Rutgers beat a ranked team?
What's that?
Yeah, what year?
2011.
2009.
Get out of here! Is that the USF game?
Not the famous number 2 game. They were number 23.
Right, yeah.
They beat USF number 23 in 2009.
Right. That is incredible.
That's the last
and they
time
were ranked a week after that.
Man.
They became ranked after that, and that might have been like the last time Rutgers has been ranked.
Yeah.
No, they were ranked
they were ranked
in
2012, too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's
unbelievable. And now you're asking them to beat Penn State or Michigan State? That's not beating number 23 South Florida.
Right. Yeah, they're not going to beat. All right, so obviously Penn State's and it's 31-point favorites.
We are throwing cold water all over this right now.
That's not going to happen. Michigan State. I'm not saying they're going to beat Michigan State, but they had Michigan State in this. Granted, they had them. They played them when they're 4th in the nation. Much more competitive. That's not going to be a 50-point blowout. I say that one year after they lost.
But Norris Wilson isn't stalking these sidelines anymore like he was that day.
No, but I think the point is, Michigan State doesn't. Wow you, with their skill position guys. They're not going to wow you with their physically. Michigan State's going to grind you out.
Hey, look, guys.
They beat Michigan and Penn State.
It'll be a double-digit point spread.
If they're 5-6 and we're having the conversation about, hey, maybe who knows? They could beat. It's a successful season.
Yeah, I mean,
it's already a successful season. Yeah. If they beat Indiana, 4 Big Ten wins and have a shot, even an outside, who knows, Hail Mary shot of making the bowl. Look, there's no one can. If you're a fan, you've got to be happy with the progress.
Yeah.
All right. Now this is funny. Now we're talking about bowls now, and Ryan, you wrote about this morning. The Big Ten. Is overall a disaster. I mean, that weekend, it couldn't have been a worse weekend for the conference.
The nation is focused on how Wisconsin's the only team that has a chance from the Big Ten to make the college football playoff. I agree, that's a big story. To me, it's not the biggest story. Maybe it's because I cover a team that's towards the bottom tier of this. But to me, it's a much bigger story that there is a chance 7 Big Ten teams, half the conference, isn't bowl eligible. That is a disaster from the Big Ten. And here's my analogy. Follow me on this. It's like when we went to Fogo de Chao, the Brazilian steakhouse, which fittingly is right next door to the Big Ten office. Mm-hmm. And we gorged ourselves on 15 meats.
15 different meats.
15 different meats.
Yep.
And the waiter came over after we had finally given up and he said, "Would you like to look at a dessert menu?" And I said, "Sure, I'll look." And you looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah.
Because my eyes were bigger than my stomach. That's how I feel Jim Delaney did with this conference. His eyes are bigger than his stomach. He made all his teams play 9 conference games. Yeah. He made all his teams get rid of FCS games. He made all his teams schedule a Power 5 school in the ATA conference. What did he think was going to happen? He left no margin for error for the likes of Maryland, Indiana, Rutgers, Minnesota, Illinois, Purdue. Of course they're not going to get to 6 wins. You just took away their path to 6 wins. Why? Because of money. Because 9 conference games is better for TV. Because Power 5 games are better for TV. Well, now you're going to lose money because you're only going to have 7 teams in bowls, and half your conference is going to be in a bowl, and everybody's going to catch on that the Big Ten's not as good as it should be. But really, it's not any worse than it used to be. It's just you made it impossible for these teams to get to bowls.
I need to add one more thing about the Brazilian steakhouse, is that we both spent $81 and expensed it. His was flagged. Well, what's the deal here? Mine just went right through. Okay, to your point. Just go on.
I was going to say,
exactly.
Do have a little bit more cash.
Yeah, when I have an $81 dinner, it's different than when done leaving. It's got to be something's wrong. All right. you want to add something?
Yeah. I got nothing. I wasn't on that trip. I think I might have been eating at McDonald's that night.
But the analogy holds, right? My eyes are bigger than my stomach.
But, I mean, I see what you're saying.
Delaney really screwed this up.
I see what you're saying, but and I understand why he did it to a degree. You wanted to see better games in the regular season. You have a network, there's programming. You want to have, you want them to.
But is it worth it? If I told you 7 teams, so you're in your quick lane bowl that you're supposed to go to if you're the Big Ten, Central Michigan's going to go.
And the quick lane bowl's on ESPN, but Maryland, Stanford, whoever they're playing, is on the Big Ten network. I think that's the broader point. I know what you're saying. But it's a bad look for the Big Ten overall.
It is a bad look.
This is a down year. That is just that loss. That Ohio State loss to Iowa is just
mind-boggling.
Yeah. Terrible defeat, and not having a team in the playoff is. That's an embarrassment. That's an embarrassment for the league.
Wisconsin does have a.
Well, what if they win through? Do they get in? If they win,
13-0, including.
Are they in?
No, you can't say that. Yes.
Well, wait. What's all the way through? It includes beating Ohio State or Penn State or Michigan State.
Probably. What if they beat Michigan State? If they beat them,
I think they'll get in if they're 13.
It all depends. I mean, you could be looking at. I'll put to you this way. Long story long again. Georgia, Alabama, if they both win out and they go to the SEC championship game, both undefeated, they're both getting in. The winner is going to be number 1, and the loser is going to be number 3. They won't be number 4; it'll be number 3. So they're both getting in. Notre Dame, if they win out, they're getting in no matter what. So then that's 3 teams right there who are going to be favored. Mm-hmm. And then Miami, if they lose to Notre Dame and they come back and beat Clemson in the ACC championship game, you're talking about a Miami team that's 12-1 with a better resume than Wisconsin. That lost to number 3 Notre Dame. You'll see Miami against Georgia. That's my prediction. Miami, Georgia with Mark Richt, as a storyline.
That's interesting.
And Alabama, Notre Dame with maybe the best college football rating ever. Alabama, Notre Dame.
Right. One last
so I'm just saying, it all depends. Now, if Miami loses, in the ACC championship game, what about Oklahoma? So it all depends. I can't say that Wisconsin at 13-0 is guaranteed to go in.
One last thing: what makes the world go round? Who knows who? Barry Alvarez was on this selection committee for years.
That's a great point.
He is not gonna. No one of his friends is gonna say, Barry, I know you were 13-0. You're out.
And and the great Barry Alvarez story of all time, we'll share with the listeners. The day that Chris Ash got hired, the day we found out, I just happened to have Barry Alvarez's cell phone somehow, and I called him, and it was like the selection weekend, and he actually picked up the phone,
stepped out of the meeting,
gave me 5 minutes to talk about Chris Ash.
Wow,
and it was great. It was Barry Alvarez can do no wrong in my eyes.
All right, let's hop right to true or false here. We're gonna talk more Rutgers. All right, as always, true or false. Give me an answer. We'll come back and discuss things at the end. Number 1. This team would have had twice as many victories last year if Jerry Kill was the offensive coordinator. True or false?
True. Twice as many now. False.
This team would have beaten Eastern Michigan if Gio Ricino was the starting quarterback. True or false?
True.
True.
That's hard to go. Number 3, Rutgers is catching Penn State at just the right time. True or false?
False. It's a 31-point spread.
I was the one who asked that question to Chris Ash, and he looked like he wanted to. Like, two press conferences in a row. He seemed like he wanted to throw something at me, but false.
False. Yeah, there's no right time. All right, this is multi-part one. If Saquon Barkley had not decommitted and stayed with Rutgers, this Rutgers team is competing for a Big Ten title. True or false?
False.
False.
This Rutgers team is ranked. True or false?
True.
Wow. Okay.
False.
This Rutgers team is still 4-5. True or false?
Yeah, false.
It wouldn't have mattered because he wouldn't have had a place in this crowded backfield. True or false?
False.
I read it somewhere on Twitter.
I read it too on Twitter.
I
just saw it.
Okay, you're a bad guy.
I believe everything I read on
guy.
Twitter.
I'm a bad guy.
You're both bad
guys. Bad guys. All right, next one. Rutgers should have redshirted more of its true freshmen this year. True or false?
I'm hard on this. True.
Really? Okay.
False. Because special teams, they're playing a lot of them on special
Speaking
teams.
of true freshmen, Hunter Hayek is now the team's best wide receiver at 5'8", 114 pounds. True or false? You can make an argument.
True.
Sorry.
Probably true.
It's amazing, isn't it? The Eastern Michigan loss has moved up into the list of the top 5 worst losses of all time. True or false?
True.
And there's some spinkers
There's
going
too
back.
I'm going to say true.
To our debate a couple weeks ago. I'll say false.
All right.
It's worse now than it was when we had that debate a couple weeks ago.
And finally, 4-star recruit Artur Sitkowski will have a chance to start the opener next season. True or false?
True. I mean, a chance? True.
I really like the kid. He's from my hometown. But I've seen too many of these quarterbacks, and not to say that they're overrated, but they're never. It takes time. I think Gio is going to be the starting quarterback.
Yeah, and let's go right to that one.
He's not starting until Game 6 next year. Okay, that's what happens. He comes in Game 6. He's like a closer. He's like comes in the ninth.
And I tell you, if Jerry the Jerry Kill today,
I think they've
the high praise that he had for Gio for his decision making. I think this is what they've come to realize. That he's not making these game-killing mistakes, throwing interceptions, throwing the ball in bad spots. Again, he's limited. He's not, but he tucks the ball away when he doesn't see something. He doesn't try to force something in. At least he has in the last 3 games. That's why they've won these games, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the most important part.
Jerry Kill said that he's a really smart player and stuff that fans don't really see. He got him. He checked at the line, got him in and out of good plays, and like you said, his decision making has been really good. He's thrown one interception, which was meaningless. It was at the end of the half. I mean,
Chris said it doesn't even count.
Doesn't even count.
Wouldn't count.
Yeah,
he
doesn't count.
That must be nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's done. He's doing stuff that like we. It's never pretty, but it's effective.
Now, the Sitkowski thing is interesting. I mean, that is got to be the highest profile recruit Rutgers has gotten. I mean, in some time.
Well, it depends. Because it's a quarterback.
Yeah,
Bo
because it's
Melton was a big deal.
Well, it's quarterback. It's 4-star. They took it from Miami, right? The decommit from Miami. And I get it. Miami is going to replace him. Miami's recruiting at a very high level now.
And he wasn't starting at IMG.
He wasn't starting at IMG. I understand all of that, but still, I mean, that's a good week for. That's a good week for Chris Ash to get that kid.
To me, the number one thing about it is you always hear kids talk about how quarterbacks rally recruiting classes. Rutgers certainly needs a New Jersey presence to round out this recruiting class, and maybe Sitkowski can do that.
And anyone who's spent any time with him, he's a very outgoing, engaging kid. I could totally see him being a Pied Piper type kid.
This is a true story that we've all heard. He tried very hard to rally some New Jersey commits before he left for IMG. Yeah. He tried to rally New Jersey for Rutgers. Huh. I assume he's going to try even harder now.
Well, he's got to rally some receivers.
Yes,
that's certainly the case. And I asked Jerry Kill about that. The other point about Hunter Hayek being the team's best receiver right now. I mean, it's just he made a point. We all saw the throw that Gio made long to Bo Melton and thought, well, gee, missed him. I made the point today the kid didn't run a good route.
Yeah.
And so we're back to this point, looking for someone to play that position at a decent level.
I thought the newsworthy things that came out of today, too, was Jerry Kill basically said, don't count on seeing Janarian Grant this season. If you do, it's gravy, but he's going to get everybody else ready because he's not counting on Janarian Grant.
Fascinating stuff. All right, so we've got some news we're going to cover now. Contracts. Let's talk contracts. See Vivian Stringer. I know it's that, it's the kind of thing that maybe the casual football fan doesn't care about, but if you're a Rutgers fan, you got to care about this. A new 4-year deal, interesting little opt-out sort of, kind of, but not really after 2 years. Sarge, what did you think of that?
It's I have a couple different thoughts on it. One, it's interesting that she's basically getting recouping her salary. Everyone made a big deal how she went from $1 million to $700,000. She's basically recouped it. It's incentive laden to a point, but a lot of incentives are very easily attainable. She's going to get $50,000 for winning her 1,000th win. That's going to happen in 23 wins whenever that happens. So basically, she's probably going to make about $900,000 a year, which is very good.
Coming off 6-24, it's more than very good.
And the people who follow it, and there are a lot of people, and we hear about it. Ryan hears about it. I hear about it from certain boosters, certain fans, that her time is done, that you need to make a change. That Pat Hobbs, what are you doing? And sure, it's political. In some respects, that it's really hard to get rid of a legendary Hall of Famer, and not just a Rutgers Hall of Famer, but a Naismith Hall of Famer. So it's hard. Not only, Pat Hobbs, clearly didn't have the stomach for it at this point.
No.
Neither did Tim Pernetti. He had an opportunity to do it.
Nope.
So did Julie Herman.
So
she
Bob.
had an opportunity. And I don't know Bob, per se, because Bob still had her, coming off
they were winning.
a year
Yeah.
removed from the Final Four. Tim certainly, had an opportunity.
Yeah.
He had a contract negotiation with her,
Yeah.
and so did Julie. And the thing that I give that Pat Hobbs credit for is in 2 years, if it's not working out, he gets to go to her and say, "Listen, it's not working out. We're going to move you to an administrative position." Let's be honest. She's probably not going to do a whole lot of administrative work, but she can still be around the program. Clearly making a lot of money, and I do hear
can't be a
people,
no-show job.
I do hear the people say $875 and $975 or $925 for administrative role. That's outrageous. I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that. However, it makes if you're going to keep her, this was probably the best of all evils.
Right. The one thing is, I'll just use a New York sports example since most of our audience probably is familiar with it. The way the Giants kind of escorted Tom Coughlin out, and it's obviously been a disaster, but Tom Coughlin went politically correctly. Like, he did his press conference and he thanked everybody, and he clearly wanted to go get another job because he's in Jacksonville right now, but he played by the rules of the Giants. He was polite and nice and all. Steve Vivian Stringer ain't doing that.
No. Maybe she does now after 2 years.
If they were, I'm saying now, today,
right now, yes.
If they did not give her a contract, if Pat Hobbs did not extend her, she was not going to shake hands and say thanks for the memories, everybody. Nope.
It's a headache that Pat Hobbs is a smart guy he doesn't need.
Correct.
The other, and I wrote about this now. You've got a football coach who's 4-5. And I wrote that he's going to get an extension. He needs to get an extension. Some fans weren't on board with this, and the point I made is that if you're a Big Ten, you're a big program. No one lets a football coach,
never
go into coaching the year 3 of a 5-year deal without extending it. So you've got two options essentially. Either you're cutting them loose, you're not going to do that, or you're going to give them this 2 years. And what I think's happened here, and people don't realize, like, Chris Ash at 1-11 was going to get these 2 years.
That's exactly
this is what was going to happen. And then it would have been us saying, geez, is this the guy? We would be asking these questions. This three wins of the last 4 games has at least taken that pressure off Pat Hobbs, where you can say, hey, look, progress. He's our guy, right? If this was 1-11 they were doing this, wow.
The same people, I won't name names, but the same people on Facebook, the same people on Twitter who were crushing, and we knew this would happen, right? Who were crushing Chris Ash 6 weeks ago. Is all too conservative, not recruiting well enough, are the same people who I legitimately saw sent messages on social media that were like, we got to lock this guy up before another school comes and gets him. And I'm like, that's everything. That's everything you need to know, right?
And if they lose
how
their
quickly it
games,
changes.
they lose their final
They
three
lose
games.
out, they'll be like, oh, I don't know about that extension.
Yeah. Lose to Indiana. What have you done for us?
All right, the Big Ten fan base that we pissed off this week, it wasn't us, but I love this little thing that I found on, and it's also the mean tweet of the week. I found this on Twitter. You're going to like that. I don't know if you guys saw it. Here's the song. Let me see if I can get it. Oh, crap. Here it goes. That was an ad first. What's an ad for? Ad for Goldilocks bed experts.
We have ads on our podcast.
Here we go.
Am I getting a kickback from them?
The Big Ten. Here it is. Did you recognize the song? You don't know what the segment is. Do you recognize the song?
Wow.
Go Terps. You don't know it yet?
Oh, Maryland.
Oh, there you go.
No, I don't recognize this song at all.
No.
This is a week. This is weak sauce.
They're all weak. Except for Michigan. You know what I figured out?
Notre Dame and Michigan.
You know what this podcast has taught me? There's a reason you know the 5 fight songs to do, because they're the only ones that are any good.
All right, so this is great. If you guys see this on Twitter, now we're talking about how do you get to be, how does Rutgers at Maryland become a rivalry? A game like that, and then you've got Scott Van Pelt,
Wow.
ESPN expert Scott Van Pelt, fighting with Rutgers fans on the Twitter about how this game ended. I mean, I just found it fascinating. He's like, so they're talking about this. He's like, fifth-string quarterback throws a game-tying touchdown. It's called back. Congrats. What's the ledger in all sports since we joined the league? Any idea? So he's fighting with these guys, I'm legitimately asking a question. What are we head-to-head since joining the league? I don't know the answer. He goes back and forth about this. So it's kind of funny. I mean, that's like,
Is he a Maryland grad?
He's a Maryland grad, yeah. So we talked about like how does this become a rivalry? Games like that. I think I think that's so now Maryland fans are going to be pissed off next year when Rutgers comes down there. Maybe this is the start of something. Maybe.
I've been saying. I mean, you know where I stand on this. I've been saying it for 3 years. That's now 3 really memorable games between these teams. So, I mean, it needs to be a rivalry. And stop pretending Penn State's your rival.
Well, that's the next question. Segue directly into that because they're playing Penn State this week. How does Penn State become a rivalry? That's the rivalry that Rutgers really wants to have. Go. What is it?
James Franklin leaves.
Franklin leaves.
That's the only chance because I can't say that Penn State will definitely hire the right guy to replace James Franklin. And I don't think James Franklin's going to be there for 30 years. James Franklin strikes me as the kind of guy who's always looking for his next great opportunity. And he deserves one. I mean, he's done a terrific job there. So if he leaves and the next guy comes in and doesn't recruit at the right level or they take a step back, I could see Rutgers and Penn State becoming rivals. I could. But it's going to take him leaving because he's recruiting at such a superior level. It's got to eat up the Rutgers fan every time you watch that team, and it's Jasicki and Blacknall and Barkley. And,
Bill O'Brien, who is...
He had sanctions. I don't think he did a great job at Penn State.
I thought he did okay, but he still out-recruited. I don't know.
He out-recruited Kyle.
Penn State is a different level.
It is.
Different level
you
program.
can look at their facilities,
and they're not going to mess up that high.
So you say there's nothing, basically. What if Rutgers won 2 games in a row?
Well, then that would certainly start it. But I mean, have they won 2 games? They've won 2 games in like 25 meetings,
correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? 2 and something.
1920 and 1988.
Yeah, 1988. Yeah, so
it's like 2 and 27 or something like that.
Yeah, that's not the makings of a pretty good rivalry.
No.
Yeah, I mean it's going to take a lot, and the program's just on a different level right now.
Yeah, what I've talked about before. I mean, with Michigan and Ohio State winning, 80% of the Big Ten championships, and Penn State, there's such a history.
But it's Michigan and Ohio State. It's not Penn State. How many times has Penn State won the Big Ten?
Penn
3?
State's been light years ahead of. Is it going to change?
Of course.
When are we talking?
But I don't think
rivalry?
Penn State is Ohio State. I think Penn State likes to think it's Ohio State and Michigan, but it's not. It's not. It's just not.
I guess the question is, in our lifetimes, is it a rivalry? Maybe. But
maybe in your lifetime, the way I've been eating and exercising, forget it. All right. Let's do some Penn State.
Fogo de Chao.
Fogo de Chao, baby. And you're not even going to Indianapolis. You should see the reservations I got for Sarge and I. You don't even want to hear it.
I might drive out there. What would you guys do if I just drove out there?
It's
supposed to be my weekend that I'm not going on a trip. What if I just showed up?
You wouldn't be surprised.
Sorry, it's table for two. There's no room at the reservation.
There might be some.
I can't change them now. All right, Penn State. Do you want to make some picks?
Sure.
How about this, by the way? The standings now, it's Sarge clearly going to win it, top. I'm behind Sarge. Then comes fans and random fan people. And then Ryan, quote-unquote, NJ.com expert, Ryan Dunleavy, below the fans.
Yeah. Let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. I'm going to the
That's a
college
disgraceful.
playoff. You're going to a nice New Year's Day.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to like what Fiesta Bowl.
You're going, and
no, not that level.
Dunleavy might be going to the Poinsettia Bowl, the one that they discontinued.
I'll be joining Art Garcia in the Heart of Dallas.
You're going to the Fort Worth Heart. What is it? Remember that
Heart of Dallas?
Is there still one named after a pizza? PapaJohns.com. Is that still?
Yeah.
That still exists. That's where you're headed. All right, so that means you get to go first, Rye, because you're last.
What's the prediction?
What's the
score?
Yeah, give me a score. Give me what's going to happen. Are they going to keep it?
It's a 31-point spread. I was really surprised.
It seemed like a lot. Yeah.
It does seem like a lot. And you know what's interesting too is Rutgers hasn't had 39-0 isn't close, but Rutgers hasn't had the annihilation game against Penn State. The scores are 14-10, 28-3, and 39-0 since they joined the Big Ten.
And they should have won the first one, obviously.
They should.
Yes.
I'll say Penn State wins 41-14.
41-14. So that's not a cover.
Rutgers
covers. Okay.
Yeah, Penn State 38, Rutgers 10. I guess that's not a cover either.
It's not a cover. I'm about the same range. I'm going to go, just because I think they're going to run Barkley to the Heisman Trophy candidacy again. Yeah. I think it's going to be 45 to 14 range, and it's a shame that I wish I'd like if this team were playing another on the same level opponent, because I really was impressed with the way they blocked with against Maryland and the way they ran the ball. I'd like to see that again, but after Michigan State couldn't run against Penn State, I don't think Rutgers is going to be able to run the ball against Penn State.
Here's the other thing that we've learned about Chris Ash. He does seem like to have an eye on, winnable games. So does Blackshear do a whole lot?
Yeah.
When
he didn't do a lot last
Indiana
week.
is a week later where you can win Indiana. So
good question.
Are they vanilla?
Not just him. Teray, Lewis, Grant, KJ Gray. Do any of those guys play against Penn State? You don't want to punt on a game beforehand, especially against a team that if you ever did win, it would be would set your program up immeasurably. But I think he's going to be smart. I think he's going to know that Indiana is really the thing that's going to make the difference in a good year and a great year.
And I'm looking forward to the trip. Not really, but it's a terrible trip. That's a great trip. My first. I'll close on this story. If I can say, one of my first college football experiences. Best friend from high school. We're going to go to the game. We drive out there, happy if I get the worst motel room in the world. We got in this it just stinks. It was still $200 a night, and my friend's like, look, we got to get there. We got to get there like 6:30. All right, this is just what you do in the parking lot.
Sarge?
Pretty much, yeah. His name's Rob Puglisi. He's not listening. So all right. Whatever, Pugs, we'll go there, we get there. So we get there, we get there at 7 a.m., there's traffic getting in there, get our parking spot, of course, start tailgating, drinking. Now it's 11:30, and I say to him, well, why don't we just go in? And he goes, well, I don't understand. Why would we go in now? I'm like, well, it's 11:30. The game starts at noon, right? No, it's a 3:30 start. These people get to these games, and there's nothing to do out there. We got there at 7 in the morning. For a 3:30 game start.
I do that. I don't even tell you.
I
just
slept
do
in the
that
backseat of the car. I'm like, I'm going to bed. I'll start over. Yeah. Give me a break.
I know we're at the point where we're having fun now in the podcast, but I want to bring it back to something the three of us haven't talked about, but it's a serious Rutgers note to end it on. And it builds off that, the idea that all those people were getting there at 6:30. You know what I thought was interesting? Two Rutgers great quarterbacks, Mike Teal and Ryan Hart, both took to Twitter Saturday night to urge more Rutgers fans to get behind this team.
Really?
I thought that was fascinating.
And Mike Teal,
I didn't see that.
They both, I think it was in response, to my story on how the crowd really lit a fire under them.
Right.
They both basically said, we got to start packing High Point Solution Stadium. Great to see this winning. I wish more fans would get behind them. Shout out to a friend of the podcast, Tad Cohen, who gave us a video of the booing in the stadium and how loud it was. I added it to my story.
Yeah.
But I could describe it, but this is why video matters in journalism now, because I could describe the booing, but actually hearing how loud it was made a difference. And, both Hart and Teal pointed out more Rutgers. What we've been saying all along, that fans should probably, and they both pointed out, get behind this team. So I thought that was interesting.
Anytime you see Mike Teal, talk about his Rutgers roots, which he's still passionate about Rutgers, it's important to note because he does have influence. He has players that future recruits. Yeah. So anytime that he keeps an eye on Rutgers, is always a good thing for Rutgers fans.
And both those guys got booed off the field at some point in their career, and both want more Rutgers fans here. So.
Good way to end it. All right, guys, signing off here. Thanks for listening. We'll be back to recap the Penn State game, win or lose, on Monday. Take care.